Well, hello everybody and welcome to your language teaching and learning channel. My name is Santiago, and if you remember in the last video we talked about the importance of practicing in order to learn a language. We mentioned the old saying, practice makes perfect, but we also mentioned that if you're not practicing correctly, you will not learn correctly. So today we're going to focus on the activity of listening, the skill of listening, okay? Many people don't realize that listening is actually taking place in the classroom. Okay? Students normally don't see that. They say, we don't have enough practice in listening. But they don't realize that they are listening when they're coming to class. I've heard that sometimes teachers use their native language in order to teach the target language. I don't want to talk about that because that should not be happening. Okay? Ideally, teachers should be setting the example to the students, so they should be using the target language, not the native language. So we will not talk about that. Let's talk about students. Students usually use their native language when they should actually be encouraged to use their target language, right? They don't realize it, but even if it's basic, you know, very short conversation. So what you did weekend? I go biking. Oh, me too. Perfect. Comprehension is there, and this is important, okay? No matter what level they're in. Another problem with students is that sometimes they don't pay attention in class. They should be encouraged to pay attention, get involved, ask questions, make comments, okay? A typical question that comes up with teachers is, you know, sometimes they ask me, for example, they say, I'm teaching a basic level. Should I speak naturally or slowly? Well, that's a topic for debate. Talk about it with your colleagues, or you know, send me your opinion. Write it in the comments, and I will let you know my opinion with support in the next video. Okay? But please send that to me. Now, another thing that we need to do in the classroom is we need to teach the students how to listen. Okay? Everything that we want them to do outside the classroom, we need to show them how to do it in the classroom first, so that they can apply that outside the classroom or in the next activity that we do. In the case of listening, for example, you know, don't even open the books. Make them listen to the conversation, dialogue, whatever, a few times first, you know, until they understand more of it, and show it to them and say, look, you see, when you're at home, listen to something 20 times if you have to. When you understand 90% of it, then you can check the script. Okay, so do that in class first, so the students actually realize, oh, look at that, you know, if I repeat it, I actually do understand more of it, okay? So this is very important. Also, when we do a listening activity, we need to have different tasks for each time we repeat the dialogue, the audio, right? The first time students listen to it, you may ask them to listen for the gist, okay? Get a basic idea, the context, what's going on. The second time they listen to it, then they listen for specific information, right? You can have them fill out a sheet, a close activity. If it's a song, complete the lyrics. You know, if they're listening to a conversation or a song and you say, okay, every time you hear the a verb, ring the bell or clap your hand, whatever. Selective listening, okay? And then in the third step would be, okay, now tell me, what is this all about? You're summarizing, right? So this is very important. For longer listenings, you need to have pre-activities, pre-listening activities, while listening activities, and post-listening activities. The pre-listening activities need to be short and sweet, to the point. Okay, a basic introduction so that the students have an idea, okay, and they're mentally prepared for what they're going to hear. The second time, listen for the gist, and the same as before, details, fill in the sheet, teach them how to take notes, okay, so that when you get to step 3, which is post-listening, they can do dictogloss, you know, retell their own story, recreate the conversation in their own words, summarize, debate, change the ending, whatever. Okay? Now, if you are choosing topics for your students for listening, when you do choose the topic, make sure they are familiar for the students, and that they feel a relationship to the topics that they're interested in. Otherwise, they will just simply not pay attention, right? And another thing that we need to keep in mind is that when we give dictation, for example, please make sure you always give them complete ideas, complete sentences, not word by word. Yesterday, I went. No, they need to remember chunks. A very good friend of mine, his name was Les Embleton, he always used to talk about chunks of the language. Students need to remember complete things, not individual words. So please keep that in mind, very important. Then we get to outside the class. Now outside the class, that's more responsibility of the students, but if we have taught them correctly how to do things in class, it should be easier for them to apply. But then they also have to be realistic. One of the things that we mentioned in the last video was the fact that we are normally not persistent and we're very impatient. Okay? I normally recommend my students to, once they start studying English, every day they go home and they should dedicate 10 or 15 minutes to listen to an audio or do whatever in English. Okay? And I tell them, look, if you're, in day one, the first week, 7 days, if in day one you didn't understand anything, I guarantee in day 7 you will understand something. Now don't expect to understand everything already, it'll take a long time, but you will understand something. And if you continue that the next week, you will understand even more. Unfortunately, what happens with students, 2-3 days, forget it, I give up. The other thing is I tell them, every day. If they don't do it every day, then they are losing continuity, you see. So they do the listening on Monday, day 1. Tuesday they don't do the listening, then they do the listening on Wednesday, and they say, okay, that's 2 already. No, you need to start from 0 again. So Wednesday would be 1 again, you see. It needs to be continuously done. So very important. A typical problem that people have when they're learning another language is they try to make the relationship between the native language and the target language. We should encourage the students to try not to do that. I know it'll be difficult in the beginning, but need to encourage them to do that, right? The other problem is that in English especially, students want to try and understand every single word. And that's very difficult, especially in the beginning. They need to realize that they don't need to understand everything. For example, here it says, what are you going to do on Saturday? If the student understands what do Saturday, and then they say, oh yeah, I go biking. That's enough. You see, they understood. That's perfect. Okay? Later on, they'll understand everything because they learn structures and everything else. That brings us to another little problem in English. The problem with English is that we will normally not say this. We will say something like this, like, what you gonna do on Saturday? Now the student listens, what you gonna do, watch, 7 o'clock. We have a little problem there, you see? And that's why you need to go back to the last video we watched, right? Remember all this, right? And then this, it's the same idea. This is the correct grammatically written form, but when we're speaking, this is what we say, and this is what the students need to practice, you see? That brings us to the other problem. Students sometimes tell me, I'm doing everything you told me, but I still don't improve my listening. I'm watching videos, and I tell them, okay, so the videos are in English, and are you using subtitles? And they say, yes, of course, but they're in English. And I said, that's the problem. You see, when you use subtitles, okay, this is what you're getting, but when we're speaking, this is what we're saying. If you're using subtitles, you're improving your reading, not your listening, okay? That's why, if you see this, you understand it. Eliminate the subtitles, you will hear this, you will have difficulty understanding. You need to make this connection here, okay? The same as the physics of biking and actual biking. It's the same idea, okay? So this is what you need to practice. And the final problem that we're going to talk about is the fact that many words in English sound similar. Here you have 2 sentences. The first one says, they did invite me to the party and I had a good time. The second one says, they didn't bite me. They chased me, but the dogs didn't bite me. If you repeat these two sentences, they will sound exactly the same. There's a little difference, and we will talk about that when we get to pronunciation and speaking. Obviously, in the context, you will understand them, but this is another thing. Obviously, when you get to a higher level, you need to understand this difference, okay? I recommend you watching, I have a good friend of mine, he has a channel, his name is Chuck, and his channel is Chuckadelphia. And he talks about intonation and sounds and homonyms and structures. Check him out so you can understand things like this. Also, it will help you improve your listening, right? So, anyway, besides Chuckadelphia, there are a lot of resources now available. So there you have a plethora of resources that you can practice your listening with. And if you apply the suggestions that I have given you, trust me, sooner rather than later, your listening comprehension will begin to improve. Thank you very much for having joined me, and see you next week.